Good morning, everyone. And yeah, this is not a deja vu, it's not a repeat of day two, but it's just like a sentiment to how important inclusivity in the web is. And I'm gonna just tackle this from a different angle, which is accessibility. And as we all know, like accessibility is not something new. We've been doing this for a while now. However, if we just have a quick look back over the past 2 years when the pandemic hit, it just uncovered how much unprepared we are still to situations, no matter how advanced we are. And I come from Jordan, so we were among, dare I say, the first countries in the world to enter lockdown. I think second week into the pandemic, just like the entire country shut down. We were only allowed out to 2 hours a day just to run errands. And one of the challenges that we faced as a company was paying our employees' paycheck. Because we have an advanced banking system. I do everything over my phone, so I don't have to worry much about these things. However, if you want to pay your employee's salary, you have to provide a paperwork as well to the bank for them to process their payroll. And it's just like, we're not allowed out. And the lines on these banks has been way too long that we actually struggle for weeks to have a turn to submit our paperwork. So imagine this is just, dare I say, like for the average person. So think about those with disability. So let's see if the clicker is going to work. I'm using it correctly, just going back and forth, back and forth. Is it? Yeah, okay. So my name is Ishraq, and I've been working in the tech industry for more than 15 years now. We at AppleStack, most of our work focuses on creating digital customer experiences. And the main work that we do is we help different businesses and brands identify their audiences. So we help you uncover who's your audience are, whether it's your products, whether it's your website, whether it's the service that you provide. We help you define personas so you understand who are these visitors are or those who interact with your system are. We help you understand their intent and build customer journey across the different channels of interaction. Another thing that we also work is usability. And to think about usability, let me take this as an example. We're currently in the UAE, right? It's an Arabic-speaking country. And if you visit one of these big brands, visit their website, the first thing that comes is like a pop-up or like a model that says, you landed on the international website version, right? Do you want to switch to the localized, market-targeted version of that website? And it could come as this pop-up. It could be automatically, they've detected your IP and they did that switch automatically to show you the localized UAE market. Or it could be just like nothing had just happened. You have that language switch at the top of the site and you have the option to go and switch. Now, this is for me, could be just a couple of clicks to close that pop-up or to do the switch. Now imagine someone who relies on a keyboard to do that. They can't use a mouse, they can't use whatever devices, and they rely on tab, 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 tab to navigate to that pop-up to close it, tab, 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 to traverse your entire navigation menu to go into that language switcher and change the language. Now, how convenient, how usable it is for them if they just landed into that website. The entire experience has been changed. It has been localized to that audience. So taking those who need a special need into account, and then they have the option to click, 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 and switch it to the international if that's their intention. And this is just like a small example of usability and its relation to accessibility. All right, so I had to talk about moving forward to the future and metaverse, and we've already touched that and talked about this over the past 2 days. And if you look, and the reason why I've chosen actually this picture, if you have a look at it and just continue looking at it for a while, for me, I claim to have like a good vision. When I look into this, I have no issues, but over time, like my head starts to play games with me, just looking into all of these colors, all of these lights. And if you enter the metaverse, the expectation is we're gonna help you go into a new experience, a new world that you never imagined before, right? It's something, if you look at metaverse pictures or NFTs, it's all vibrant, right? It gives you that illusion that we're entering something different, something new. Now, for someone with disability, if we ask that question, someone who has issues with their vision, can we switch this entire world to be in black and white? Because they can't, they would perceive this after a while or from the get-go as a noise. For some, going into that metaverse is an experience, it's an entertainment. For some, that's just a pure noise and they can't deal with it. If some of you watched the movie, I think it was last year when it was dropped, the Fungi, I think, yeah? And the amount of empathy and passion we had for that character. It's an unplaying character who just realized that, oh my God, I am not trivial. I'm trivial in this game. No one works with me, no one uses me to play. And then with that realization, it just came to life, started to make decisions. And then, oh my God, they're planning to kill my friends as well, and he just go up and beyond to help his friends. So imagine how the movie creator managed to create that amount of empathy to a fictional character that lives in the metaverse that could, come to life or not. And we still do not give the same amount of the user, of those with disability. We don't even think about them unless we've been told, have you catered for that? Now, there's some studies by WebIM, and they are just like a leader in talking about accessibility, that 98% of the world's top 1 million websites do not offer full accessibility. So what does that mean? It means only 2% of these brands realize the competitive advantage that they have on the rest world by merely just showing some sort of accessibility. And when we talk about don't provide full accessibility, and my apologies because most of my experiences in the web, I'm focusing more on web terminology, but you can apply this to the rest of the tech industry. So some of that just go to the extent of having a page called accessibility, and in there they say we've realized that we need more work to be done on our website to be compliant with accessibility. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you have any feedback, this is a phone number, this is an email, you can reach out to us and speak about accessibility. And that's about it. And that's good, that's not bad. It's just showing that, yeah, we know there's a need for that, we're addressing it, but we just need time. But that's where the entire effort into accessibility is being put, unfortunately. Now, in order to just put this all into perspective, I think I'm gonna just for the sake of this discussion, start with understanding the concept of accessibility, who have these accessibility needs. And a common example that comes to mind, because everyone, and every time you talk about accessibility, we think about people with wheelchair, right? So imagine that if you look at the pavement, at the end of each one, there's a little curb, right? That's designed to help those with wheelchair to get into the pavement and just go into their way. And if you expand that question and say, who else uses it, right? We see parents with strollers, right? We see travelers with their suitcases. We actually see bikers who do not have a designated lane in the street to go in there, they use it to access. So if we just broaden our understanding of what accessibility means, it actually, each one of us has been in a situation where they experienced these needs and they needed some sort of help. So accessibility or disability does not only pertain to physical situations. It's not only the permanent situation. It could be a temporary one, right? With an injury. If I injured my hand, I can't use it anymore. How on earth am I gonna be using my phone in a way that helps me? Even if it's just like a temp case. Same thing, with situational, with a mom who's feeding her child, and at the same time she's looking for nappies to buy online, right? Each one of us has been at a certain point in need for a certain of assistive help in that. So it's not only for those. And the moment we start to think about this from a holistic perspective, right, just like be more inclusive of every single thing, we start to think, oh, it does not have to be something explicit. This is where I like to talk about normalizing the talk about accessibility. It should be something normal. It should not be something imposed. It should just come to our mind as by default. So this leads me to the why. Why does it matter? And when I put this slide together, I was like, do we really need to justify why this is needed? Like if I just walk in the street and find like a blind person and they need or may not need, just like you look at them, you would automatically offer help to them. So not just because we see that kind of need, we just rush for a help. It's moral obligation. It's, in certain scenarios, and it's funny, it's actually legal, right? It's the law. There is similar, I like to connect this a little bit. It has nothing to do with, but at least the approach of it, like with the privacy, right? The need for me to protect my data, to get consent for them to be shared with everyone else, it has always been there. It has always been there in the Declaration of Human Rights. But until it was formulated as a law within the GDPR, within the European, and then the Californian Act and all of these kinds of stuff, that's when people started to find themselves like obliged, right, to be compliant with that, because now we have a consequence to it. And I've worked on lots of projects that we spent a huge amount of our budget. We just spend down that budget and resource, just go back to everything that we have implemented, revise our cookie policies, revise the way we are storing these data, just to be, if someone or any of these entities just come and check your compliance with the GDPR law, you're actually compliant. Now, have we learned our lesson when it comes to accessibility? And we're actually, I don't think, maybe it's up to an extent, I hope, in my ways to say that this is not something, you've been doing this for a while, but it's not something that we actively include that within our work. And there's actually the Article 9 of the Convention of Rights oblige the countries that sign for it to be compliant. So there's a ranking to it, and each continent, they have a ranking of countries that showcase how much dedicated they have done work for accessibility. Just go back to the metaverse kind of word, right? It just, if you think about it again, it just starts like a fantasy. It could be something nice, it could be dystopian, I don't know, it's about how you view this kind of stuff. But it raises the question, like for this one, someone with amputation, when they create their avatar, when they interact with metaverse, they could find that they have a full leg and they can walk freely, and they could have that kind of a sensation. Now, for me, when I've had a look into this, it was a little bit controversial, because I like to say, like, I don't see this as something people should feel it's different. It's just a normal person, should not be treated differently. For me, that's a leg, whether it's a prosthetic or an actual leg. But there's another thing, we should not only think on their behalf, listen to them. Maybe they would feel hugely different, right? It could make them feel certain way if they imagine or they see themselves doing this life and metaverse, just having their full leg or whatever, right? So it is really important that we do not only think on their behalf, we include them in that. Because most of the time when we talk about accessibility and when we talk about what we need to do for that, we always think about the end customer. We think about the end user, how they are going to interact with our businesses or with our brands. But we always forget that they could be the developers who work with it. They could be the marketers who are creating these strategies, right? They could be the active one who's building that. Have we prepared the technology that we are developing, that we are building, to make them an active stakeholder, not just a passive holder, a stakeholder, right? And I think I'm gonna geek a little bit in here, and I have to talk about that. Again, it might be from our perspective, but it's just the same when it comes when you're building your product or you're building your app or whatever. So it goes into every single step of your business, from strategy. When you envision, when you start to think about your product, that's where it starts. It does not have to be something that's retrofit into your business. It does not have to be something that we think about as something imposed. It's from the get-go. And it's funny because when I work with the clients and we're talking especially on the strategy, and the question comes, how we are going to justify putting part of the budget during a planning to tackle accessibility questions? Because for them, it's not like a button or a new feature that has developed. It's not a new sensor that has been developed for them to see an actual result, right? It's where you can help them realize that by investing now, you're going to see the results later on in more traction to your website or to your brand. For example, I've worked with the tourism website for one of the governments, and one day we were looking at their analytics, and we find on one of the channels, because like channels you would expect people coming from a desktop, from a mobile, and then it was a screen reader. And it's like, oh my God, how come we did not even think to test against that? We know that we need to be compliant, but over time, like the rush of a deadline, we need to go live and we need to do all of this kind of stuff. We neglected a huge thing, especially when we're a tourism website. We need to be available for everyone at every single time. And that just like, okay, now we know that there's a new channel that we need to look at. So all of our customer journey, all the personalization work that we're doing, all of our marketing activities and planning also cater for that. When it comes to design, same thing. Another example that comes to mind, people who are colorblind, right? We keep saying just be shy from using colors to convey message solely. For example, green and red. We look at that automatically, go stop. You're fine, there's danger. But what we can see now is everyone's also using signs with that, right? You have your tech, you have an X as an assistive mechanism, and that's how things need to go. You do not rely on imagery only to convey a message. If there's a need, if that color enough is not enough for you to do that, go the extra mile. When you create your manuals, right? When you're selling a product with a manufacturer and you have your manual, your catalog, and you're putting these step 1, step 2, step 3, take into account that the user who's interacting with it could not be a human, could be a screen reader, and they won't be able to read that image because that image it's just an image. It has to have, by design, and this is, as we say, privacy by design, we talk accessibility by design, and finally, implementation. And from an implementation perspective, we do understand the challenges that we have, especially when you have your front-end team and development team are not equipped or not familiar with that. There's an investment going there, for sure. It just goes hand by hand with your design team who takes that into account. Something also like I came across and I never thought about it was dyslexic people. So one of the biggest debates when developers work on dates, right? The format, like for this event. Am I going to display that as 22nd of March or March 22nd? Should have been localized based on the culture where I'm showing this event, or should not? But we do not talk much about the abbreviation, but that abbreviation actually could impose challenges for those who are dyslexic. So another thing to think about. So for the web, and we hope, and the same thing, all of these standards, all of these guidelines has always been there. It's evolving over time, right? It's not only for the web. Tomorrow you're gonna see the same thing when it comes to metaverse and all the new technology and advancement. And something that's popular that always comes to mind are the Wcag principles. And these just like tell you to think about it from 4 perspectives. Once you understand the different functionalities that come with it, most of the time you're gonna be, in a way, compliant with accessibility. So it has to be perceivable, and it's like a very, very trivial thing to do, which is totally neglected. And it's like, number 1, when you display an image on your website, if for whatever reason that image broke, there should be a text displayed. I've worked with a retail customer. They have more than 50,000 images. And these images all failed when we ran the accessibility tools because they did not upload an image tag. So can you imagine the amount we had to put just to go and add that image tag, which is an alternate text? It has to be meaningful. So it's not just like you have your development team create a script and blah, 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 just copy whatever name or random. It has to be meaningful. So when a screen reader gets into that, it actually understands it. Think about localization. Localization is a form of usability and accessibility. We tend to do all of these activity in our default language. If English, then that's English. How about switching the language now? Are we expecting to read the text in Arabic and then when the screen reader goes into the image, it gives us the English caption? So being perceivable, being operable. This is the same thing for those who need assistive devices to go through your site and navigation and everything. Everything should be presented in a way that's efficient, that's usable and easy for them to use, understandable. So we all understand that, for example, easy one, I bought a product, I go into my checkout process. I know I'm gonna add it to cart, I'm gonna check out, I'm gonna pay, define my delivery options, and voila, that's it, right? Even when we create these screens, we need to take into account what is the best way to do that. Should it be a tab? So if I am using my keyboard to navigate between these steps, is it easy for me or for that assistive reader to help me with that? Or should it be navigated to another page? Should it be displayed in a different way that's easier and efficient and usable for everyone to use and robust? Because at the end of the day, we're using standard universal languages to build all of our systems, right? It has to be able to be used by any technology out there. And if you look into this region, for example, and just like took this region as an example, but it's all over the world now. At certain governments, if you're working with them on a website or a product and you do not comply with the accessibility standards that they are also compliant with, they will not approve your website. So there's work out there. We're doing it. It's global. You need to just understand and differentiate that each region, each culture, and each environment has their own unique needs and unique laws that you need to abide with. It's nice that we read about everything, but always keep in mind that certain industries, certain verticals will impose something more or could be lenient, but always something to look at. And finally, there has to be an homage for AI and how AI can help us with our accessibility work, right? And I think, was it day 1 or 2, can't remember when we were talking about AI, we've also raised this question about definitions and terminologies, right? Can we precisely say what an AI is? Are we still at that point where we keep confusing machine learning with AI? Is what we're building to help us with our product actually machine learning, or it's an AI? But does it matter? Does it have to be this or the other for me to be accessible? It has, the thought behind accessibility should be behind every single, I don't know, cycle. If you work with you are at the initial phase of data sets creation, if it's data mining, if it's the processing of the algorithm, if it's the actual, all the tools, all the processes that we are used to help us with the AI has to have accessibility in mind. And again, it should and always gonna raise the question of ethics. Same thing with autonomous car. If the car is going to hit a pedestrian, that pedestrian could be on a wheelchair, could be a woman, could be an elderly. It's the most common dilemma, right? The philosophical question about the trolley. It always comes to mind. Who's to blame? Is it the machine? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the developer? Is it the data sets, right? Because something we always need to keep in mind is that we need to have our house already unset before we think the product that we're creating is actually gonna be correct, right? If the algorithm, the tools that we are creating is a reflection of us as a society. We, as a society, we input that data, so we can't expect that the machine will behave anything different than the society unless it has explicitly been designed to be different. Because if all the data, for example, in HR and recruitment and hiring has been consciously or unconsciously biased against people with disability, that's automatically being fed into the algorithm. The algorithm already has been trained to skip and not give an equal opportunity for those. So we can't expect the algorithm to be better than us unless we explicitly design it to be that. And just like final thought, I know the question about equality, diversity, and inclusion should always be up and front in all of our discussions. We are living in a world where we're envisioning a complete new universes that we do not know if it's gonna stay or not, but on the premise that it's gonna last, let's make sure that we are creating a responsible tools, we're creating responsible devices, we're creating responsible universes that's gonna help us be better, hopefully, in the future. And that's a wrap for me. Thank you so much.